Okay, so this is going to be a tutorial about retouching of a photograph. So what I've done here is in Google, I've typed in the phrase old image workshop, which you can see up here, and I pressed return, and this is what came back. So I'm looking for a particular image that Photoshop used to use, and they used to include it in their folder structure with the program, but not anymore. So I'm going to find it. So I'm just going to click on this one, and there it is there. You can see it's a damaged photograph, lots of scratches and dust on it. And I just bring it up as big as I can get it on the screen there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click it and I'm going to say copy the image, right? Now I'm going to go to Photoshop, which I happen to have open. I'm going to say, file, I'm going to get it back to my workspace. Okay, just go file and new. This will bring it up. Now, one of the options here, remember before when we were going through in the previous one, we were saying you get print options here, and you can make a workspace where I don't know what size that image is, but I copied it. So I'm going to go back, and you can see one of my options here in recent is clipboard. Now, when you copy something, it goes to a section of the computer's memory called a clipboard. That stores one thing, and that is whatever you last copied. So it could be the text of an entire novel, it could be a letter from that novel, it could be a photo, it could be a file, it could be an audio file, it could be anything. When you copy something so that you can paste it later on, clipboard is where it's stored. So I'm going to choose clipboard. You can see there it's 400 by 600 and it's 72 pixels per inch. That's its resolution. If you watched the last video, the intro to Photoshop video, I'd have gone through resolution. I mentioned 72 as being the resolution of all images taken off the internet, and there it is, 400 by 600 pixels. And you can see over here, it knows that if I choose clipboard, that's going to be the size. I'm going to switch it to inches. If you want to see, it's going to be 5.5 by 8.3, or go to centimeters, whatever way you want to do it. So I'm going to say create, and I get a blank page, and I'm going to paste that in. Now, I've somehow very cleverly managed to hide a lot of stuff. So let me just go to Workspace, Essentials. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I've got everything. So I pasted that in. So let's go back a step. So I'm going to say, remember my history? It made a new one. So when I chose clipboard, it made this blank space for me. And then I just go edit, paste. Now, this looks very small on the page. I'm going to go to view, and I'm going to say fit on screen. And that just fills the screen with it without losing anything from it. So there's basically one technique we're going to use here to fix this photograph, and that is called, over here, it is called the spot healing brush, right? So you can see what it does, right? So I'm just going to show you some basic techniques about how to use this, right? So at the moment you can see I've got a cursor there, and that's called a brush. A brush is a cursor that does a task, like it paints or it erases or something like that. And you can change the size of it. Over here, you can drag the size. You can also drag the hardness of the brush. So we want something in the middle that's going to have a soft edge, and I'll explain why that is now in a sec. As long as it's not a clean edge, that's what we don't want. Now, that can be a bit difficult. Now I have to change the size and then come over here and check. So I'm going to close that, and I'm just going to show you a quick way. If you look on your keyboard, to the right of the letter P, there are two brackets. The left hand of those two brackets makes the brush smaller, the right hand one makes it bigger. So I'm going to get my brush down to a little bit bigger than the areas I'm trying to fix, right? So I'm going to click on that, and it's gone. So what it does is it looks at that circle and it says, right, somewhere in the middle of this, there's an area of the image that doesn't look like the stuff around the edge. So I'm going to take the stuff around the edge, clone it into the middle, and hopefully that will blend it out. So if you just go clicking on things, you know, some of the smaller bits that you can fit inside the brush, you know, you can see, you can get them. Now what I wouldn't suggest doing is this. You can hear the clicking of the mouse there. I'm kind of leaving a streak there, and you can see how quickly I started to fill up my history palette, if you remember from the last video. So I'm just going to go back to paste. There, everything is back to normal. Now eventually you'll get to a point where you'll fill this up, and what happens is it throws away the first one, so you can't get back to that position. So it only restores maybe the last 20, 30 clicks or whatever it might be, but it will run out. So here's a line here, right? See this faint line? I'm going to just paint over that. And I look at it, did it work? Yeah, I got away with that one. I'm going to keep going. Yeah, not really. So I'm going to say undo or control Z on your keyboard, or you can rewind one here. So then I go again. Yeah, looks okay. I try not to paint with this. I look at it, and sometimes your eye can still see the streak of where you fix something. If you can see it, you probably need to undo it and then tackle it with clicks rather than paint, like painting a streak, Now let's try it on a big area like this. I'm just holding the mouse down and I'm scribbling over all of this. Yep, that looks all right. And I move on. So there's no areas where you're going to have a problem are like, if I was to travel from here all the way across here, there's such a variation between dark and lighter areas that you might leave a big streak across there. Or areas where one area meets another, like along his hair. Yeah, I think you can always improve it. And the question you ask is, have I made it better by doing this, And then for bigger areas, you might want to make your brush bigger. That's the bracket to the right of the letter P, the right hand of the two. And then you can just paint over big areas. And you can see what's happened there is I've gotten a little double streak there. So single clicks can kind of help get rid of things. I don't think that was as good. You might not be able to see it on that. But I'm going to make my brush smaller. Now, this is probably holding up pretty well. I'm going to go back to right to the start where I pasted it, right? And I'm just going to show you one thing that I probably should have done at the start. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I've got a layer menu here, and I can say duplicate layer. I'm going to call this original. Oh, I'm going to call this retouch. Excuse me. I'll show you why. Retouch. So now I have two layers sitting one on top of the other, right? So I'm going to start painting this one like I did before, just getting rid of those. I'll do that very quickly just to kind of work in big chunks rather than. So I'll make my brush a bit bigger just to get us a bit further along, Okay. Now let's say I get to a point where I've really overworked this. It's really just a mess. I can switch off that layer, and I still have the original one underneath it, just in case anything goes wrong. I turn the one on, I select the one on top, that's the retouch. Down here I can just call that original. So it's always there if I need it. I don't have to go pasting it back in or anything. I can always just bin that layer if I want to. So I can click that layer, hit the little bin at the bottom down there. Do I want to delete it? I'm going to say no for now, I want to keep it. Or I can just physically drag this into the bin, and that will delete it as well. I just drag it back there. So that's retouching. Let's continue on a little bit with this. And Photoshop's gotten very good at figuring out what's the damaged bit and what's the bit that doesn't need repair. I'm going to go quite small for that one. All right. So it's not perfect. I could go spend all day getting the tiny little bits out of this, but it's definitely better than it was, So, and there's before and after. So you can go and dig through your parents and your grandparents' old photographs and fix them for them, and they love it. Okay, so I'm going to save this now. Save as, and I'm going to call this retouch. I'm going to keep it in its Photoshop file. I'm going to add it to Will Graphics, which is the folder I made in the previous one. I'm going to say save. Okay, and that's saved. Okay, so the next one will be about colorizing this image, and we'll come back to that in a separate video. Thank you.